Good afternoon. If you are viewing, listening, however you are tuning in, we want to welcome you to another episode of the Charging Station Africa 2022 edition.
It's been great talking about this.
I
And,
had a
you
good
mentioned
time.
it being the afternoon. It might be the morning for you, wherever you're listening to
Yeah,
this, whenever you're catching it. And we're just grateful that you are. We're grateful that you have logged on, that you're checking out
yeah.
what this is. And I've enjoyed it
It's been
so
a
far
blast so
talking
far.
about it. I don't get this opportunity very often.
Yeah.
And so thank you for that. Thank you for the personal questions that you've been you've
Let's
been
just hit it.
asking.
You hit it. Let's hit it. I asked you one at the end of the last episode. I asked you how you disconnect, and you were kind of vague. You didn't really get into it. I know it's personal, but we dig in a little bit. What are some actual things that you do on your days off from here? I'm gonna ask it differently. Days off that you personally disconnect. We're just trying
Well,
to get to know our pastor.
yeah, I do run and do exercise and do all of that. And it's when you get into that, sometimes even with that, I am listening to books in particular. Sometimes I might be working on sermons, and so there are times where I have to intentionally make
Yeah.
sure that I don't put anything in my ears because I just want to be refilled by the Lord. And not that those things don't, but when you're in leadership, sometimes listening to leadership materials doesn't necessarily help because it gets your mind churning.
Yeah.
But one of the biggest things that I really like, and I may have mentioned this before, but I enjoy going to the beach and I enjoy looking for shark's teeth because during that time, it's just normally just the sound of the water, the waves breaking, and then I'm just looking down and I'm trying to concentrate on that. And
Yeah.
so, just different ways of really just being intentional, and it's what it has to be.
Absolutely. I like that. So wherever you're, just to tell you, take the the example from our pastor. One thing he does with your staff, I appreciate you for this. You make us take a day off, and I think me. It'd be tough sometimes
Yeah,
to
yeah,
to disconnect
yeah.
myself because that's who I am. But
Yeah, and you know what? I'm glad you're mentioning this. Didn't know that this was going to be going that way, but I guess that's what's good about these
yeah,
podcasts
I like
and
them.
video casts. But is the fact that I noticed that when I came back from Africa, that it had been a while since I'd taken time, and for a long time, and just being upfront, I was very hypocritical with you guys and admitted that I was because I asked you and enforced that you were to take a day off, but I wasn't taking the day off. And so that has changed in my life. But I knew that going well into Easter and then going on the trip and then coming back, and sadly still is difficult to get a 24-hour period.
Yeah,
But I knew that on the trip, coming back from the trip, I could tell within myself that I had to step away because I had been too much engaged in it, and it was beginning to affect my spirit. And so, thankfully, the Lord has worked that out. And but even while we were gone, we tried to take a day or two in the midst of everything to just get away a little bit.
yeah, I like it. So yeah, so we last week we talked in general about Livingston a little bit and all that. And man, it's great. I love the pictures of the Victoria Falls. If you missed that one, go back and check that podcast out.
Yeah,
But let's just pick up there.
yeah.
Pick up at Livingston. So you guys are in Livingston, the city of Livingston, for a while. We saw the statue of David Livingston. We
Yeah,
stopped
we
over at
did.
him.
We actually
Victoria
we
Falls.
actually stayed there, and for a couple of nights, we went up one afternoon and went to Victoria Falls. It didn't take long to go through Victoria Falls at all. And the next morning, we got up and went on a safari. Our host wanted to take us on to experience the safari, and so when you're in Africa, you just do what you do, and that was an incredible experience.
I bet it was. Did you see any animals?
Oh, you know we
No,
did,
on an
man.
African safari, I've never done that. Never done one. The bit close I've come to safari is probably Animal Kingdom down in Disney.
Yeah.
Is it similar?
It's,
I'm sure it's not. That was a
somewhat on a very, very, very small scale.
really?
If you think about riding in the motorized cars as a kid,
Yeah, yeah,
you got the little Jeep that
yeah.
you used to drive around when you were 3. It's that compared to riding in a real Jeep. So Animal Kingdom is like the little small thing, but then when you get in a real Jeep, you know it, and there's a complete difference, and that's what it was because the animals were completely wild.
Yeah, I was about to say there's fences there. There's no fences in Africa,
No,
correct?
no, no. They did have some along the roadways, just like we would have, but it is what they considered was the bush. So we were in the bush, and so you did not know. Matter of fact, in our hotel room, there was on the monitor in the lobby, there was a little sign that said, beware of the zebras. So it's not something that we would see every day, but the zebras wander around the area, and they're very much, when it comes to conservationists and all of that, they want to make sure that those animals are taken care of.
Okay.
So everything is done in the wild. We might talk about that as we go through this a little bit.
Beware. What can a zebra do to you?
Well, just like any wild animal, it's just wild.
Okay.
And so you never know what it's going to do.
Because I think of a zebra like, the little. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's just move on. Okay. Yeah. So tell us about. You want to tell us some of the animals?
Yeah,
you want to
I'll
show us
show
some
you.
pictures? Yeah, we got pictures.
There was. I saw some of your relatives, Pastor Bobby.
All right. That's
There
my
was a
brother.
sign that said, "Don't feed the bamboos," but a monitor lizard and then an antelope.
So that's
that
a
was
bamboo.
there.
That's not a monkey.
No, this is a bamboo.
Okay. Is there a difference in a bamboo and a monkey? I've heard there is, right?
Yeah, and these guys would pop up everywhere, and they were camouflaged because the bush looks like this, so
Okay.
you wouldn't necessarily see them, but you'd see something moving, and they'd be picking in the dirt and all of that. So it's very
What's this guy getting
interesting.
jackalope?
It's an antelope,
Antelope.
but it is the McDonald's of Africa, because when you look, if you look on the back side of it, it would be like the golden arches were painted in black. And they yeah, and they were everywhere. So those are just some of the small ones. Now we did see the zebras. This picture is not good, but you would just walk around. You'd be in the
That's not a zebra.
not the zebra, but the giraffe.
Okay.
Yeah, you would just go around and you would just see giraffes just sticking their head above the tree.
That's cool.
And it was, but we went on a boat, and then we had lunch, and then we got into the Land Cruiser and walked around. Went around, and it was really amazing to see. But we were after the Big Five of Africa.
The Big Five.
The Big Five. The Big Five is it's lion, leopard, the water buffalo, elephants, and the rhinos. So there were 5 of the Big Five that we were looking at. And so as we were leaving one day, or the day of, in the afternoon, we came across this right here. And I don't know if you can,
I don't see anything.
see it, but it's there. So let's zoom in a little bit more, and you still probably can't see it all that great, but it is a lion. And it was big. It was a big deal to see the lions because it's difficult to see them. But just because you don't see them doesn't mean that they're not seeing you. And so everywhere I went, I'm just listening. And if we will cultivate in our lives the ability to listen to what the Lord is speaking, then it'll speak something into our lives. And this is it. The guide told us, he says, when prey sees predator first, it's game on. When the prey sees the predator first, it's game on. But when the predator sees the prey first, it's game over. So
Okay.
I began to
I see
unpack that
that.
a little bit. So there were other animals around the lion there, but it was because they had already identified where the lion was.
So they were okay.
So they were okay
Sorta.
because they saw him first, and the lion knew that they had been caught. He had been caught. So there was no threat,
And he wouldn't mess with them.
or she wouldn't mess with him. But when the lion sneaks around and sees the prey first, then it's game over with, because it's gonna be done. And when spiritually speaking in our lives,
I'm feeling it.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So for us, we've got to be vigilant, be watchful, because we recognize that there is an enemy who's out there who is like a roaring lion,
yeah.
seeking whom he may devour.
Yeah.
But if we can identify what it is that is going on and the fact that he is there, it'll save us from the trouble in our lives.
How do we identify? Let's get off this. Let's get on. This is good. How can we identify? How do we know it's the enemy? How do we know that's the enemy in our life? Not in our life, but coming against our life.
Yeah, knowing that sometimes that it's what God would not do, and know his word and what his word says. Some things that come against us, we know that's not from God.
Yeah.
And if it's not from God, it has to be from him.
Thank you. We have not talked. I was thinking about the counterfeit.
Yeah.
Knowing what a real bill looks like is how you can identify something's counterfeit.
That's
So knowing who God is in your life
Yeah.
can identify the enemy in you. Wow.
yeah. And you know, that brought up a lot of conversations. We got to move because there's just so much I want to share with this in this segment. But you know, as we were looking at this, I also discovered that elephants eat for 18 hours a day. Lions sleep for 18 hours a day. And so it takes that much for the elephants, obviously, to eat, but the lions, they get what they need, and they're on the prowl. And so it made me wonder, how do we get to the place that the lion is the king of the jungle? How is it that the lion is the chief of all animals? And there are, for most of these, there are no other predators except for the lion. And the lion doesn't have the ability to take down a water buffalo necessarily unless it's weak and it's vulnerable. And so that is when the enemy comes in our life as well, is when we find ourselves in those places of weakness, when we find ourselves separated from where we need to be, when we find ourselves away from the flock, so to speak. We're opening ourselves up to the enemy moving in our lives, and we're compromising. And it won't be long before he'll come in.
So the away from the flock.
Yeah.
Away from the flock. Elaborate just for a
I
second.
mean, you can
Yeah.
see this. Just look on National Geographic.
Yeah.
Some of the antelopes, some of the ones that the gazelles, different
I'm
ones.
thinking
When
church.
they begin to separate. Yeah, that's exactly what happens.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing that happens in nature is the same thing that can happen in the church. So when we begin to separate and we begin to disconnect ourselves, we're making ourselves vulnerable to what's going on.
Man, stay in the house of God.
It is. It is. I want you to check this one
Keep
out
going.
too.
Yeah. Is it rhinos?
These are rhinos, and this was in one of the national parks there, and there's only 10 of them that are in existence. I believe these were white rhinos, but there's only 10 of them that were in existence. And right there by your shoulder, you can see the horn that is on the rhino, and the horn is what they want. So when poachers come in, they're trying to take that horn from them, because in some cultures they believe that there's medicinal purposes, that they'll grind it down and they'll use it for some sort of medicine. And so poachers can get up to 20 years in prison for killing one of the animals. And
Now, you said there's only 10 white rhinos in
that area.
Okay, in
yes.
this area.
And now that might be in the whole country of Zambia. There might be, but they're pushing for extinction.
Okay.
So we were able to walk, and you can see how close that I was. And that's one of the most dangerous animals that there is. Actually, the most dangerous is probably the hippo. But and we on the boat, our guide stayed away from them because they're that dangerous. But the rhino will get you. And so we were that close. But over here, over on my shoulder, I want you to see these guards with the AK-47 that's there. Now they would walk us to the place, because as we started the safari, they knew where the rhinos were. And so I just got talking to them, and I said, well, you know, you say that there's 10 of them, but I only see 5. I said, do you know where the other 5 are? And he just stared at me. And it was like, of course I know where they are. You don't see them, but we see them because we're watching after them. And he said, you only see 2 of us, but there's much more of us out there that are watching over these animals. They said that if they were gone, that within 3 days, every one of the rhinos would be extinct.
Poachers.
The poachers would get them. So they are there watching over them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Wow.
So when I begin to process that, these are the guardian angels to the rhinos. And there are things that are happening in our lives in the spirit realm that we don't even see. And I wonder how many things that God has protected us from that we don't even know that happened in our life. But he had an angel that he dispatched to watch over us, to protect us, to watch after us, to make sure that no harm came upon us, because we've spoke the blessing. We've invoked the blessing over our life. And it's up to God to dispense and do whatever he wants to do to make sure that there's nothing that happens to us.
Wow. That's incredible, Pastor. That's a good word. It's a good word.
Yeah. I'm just sitting there, whatever I'm in, and you could just sense the presence of God. I'm not trying to spiritualize this. I'm just being real. And you've asked for me to share some of the things that I have experienced, and this is as real as it gets, and this is where we are.
Yeah. So what else?
I
What's the next? I want to see. I want to see more
see
animals.
this one.
What is this?
Now you see the herd that's there. It's
Okay.
actually not a herd. I want you to look at this from a different perspective.
That's shadows.
So right there, you see the shadows, but what is it that you
There's
see that
zebras.
you look closer?
Okay. All right. Can you? I hope they
Zebras.
can see that. If they can't, wow.
Yeah, just may have to
That's
stop. May have to stop whatever that you're watching.
yeah.
This was a National Geographic Picture of the Year recently, and it is of the zebras. And I must say that of all the animals that I saw, the most intriguing to me had to be the zebras. There are with the zebras, there are three different types of stripes that they have that tell the different stories about them. Now, this top one, you can see me at sunset. That's not where we stayed, but we went to visit that because that was the Royal Livingston Hotel, and we wanted to catch the sunrise over the Zambezi River. But at dark, they just came walking out, and it's not a herd of zebras; it is a dazzle of zebras, and they just came walking out, and they're completely wild, but they're beautiful. You know, I spoke to them while I was there, and one of the stories that I told was about the stripes of a zebra. The zebra stripes are just like our fingerprints. They're
Mhm.
every single one of them are unique and different. And so no two zebras have the same stripes. But it is said that when there is a calf that is born, that the mother will separate the calf from the herd, or the dazzle is what it's called. They will separate, the two of them will go out and they will spend time alone. And during that time, as they're alone, the calf will learn the stripes of its mother. So when it's back in the group and there's all the voices and all the people and all the things that are going on, that the young calf knows so much about its mom that it can identify its mom by its stripes. And, you know,
Yeah.
when we talk about intimacy with, see, you get these
Yeah.
before I even see it,
I see it.
you know, that's what the Lord does for us, is he pulls us aside to get to know him. Jesus spent so much time, even though he was surrounded by the disciples, he spent so much time alone talking to the Father. And I think it was intentional. And for us, we have got to be intentional about getting to know who he is. Because when we're in the midst of all the confusion, we're in the midst of the troubles, we're in the midst of everything that's going on, we will miss what's going on if we don't know to identify his voice, who he is, and his works.
You're preaching sermons on these animals. Every one of them. We got more. 'Cause
Actually, I do. If you've got time, I can
one more.
share
Let's do
one
it. Let's
more
go.
with
I
you.
think we got time for one more.
And
Let's go.
and this one is interesting. This one is a little bit different. Now, the animal that we spent the most time with was the elephant. And let me just go ahead. I am, you know me, I am not one that puts a plug in for different movies. And I can't believe that I'm going to mention this movie. Holiday in the Wild is actually on Netflix, and it's got Kristen Davis and Rob Lowe in it. And somebody told me about it while I was there, so I stayed up one night and I watched the movie because it was filmed in Lusaka, and at the area that we was in, it talks about rescuing orphaned elephants. So you know, it gives you a feel of the culture that we were in, and we actually went to one of the reserves that they raised the orphan elephants in. But the elephants are unique creatures. I didn't realize this, but with their tusk, again, poachers are coming after them too. But with their tusks, there are two different. Often they're different sized, and so the shorter of the tusk often means that is their predominant tusk. So just like we have left and right hands, they
Okay.
have a predominant tusk, and so you can see some of that with them. But the palm trees, when European settlers came to Africa to begin with, they planted palm trees by the coast because when they came back, they wanted to identify where they had been, so they could tell where they would been because there were palm trees along the coast. Well, what happened was is that as they began to plant those trees had fruit, and when the fruit fell, the elephants ate the fruit. And when they ate the fruit, they went deeper into the bush And when they got deeper into the bush, let's just say
They passed the fruit.
they passed the fruit.
There we go.
And when they passed the fruit, they passed the seed. The seed planted in the ground, and now there are palm trees in the middle of the bush in Africa.
That's kind of cool.
That is cool.
Yeah.
But spiritually speaking, we have no idea what's inside of us. And we have no idea what it is that God wants to do in our lives. And I believe that as followers of Jesus Christ, we are carrying seed in our life that sometimes we don't even know about. And God wants to plant that in places that it might not naturally grow, because that's how much he wants to use us.
On the contrary, we got to be careful the other way too, don't we, Pastor?
We do.
And I know that's another sermon, different illustration there, but we got to be careful what we are planting as well.
Yeah.
We can plant out the bad stuff too. So,
yeah.
Wow, that's really cool.
But the fruitfulness of what happens, just looking at it from a fruitful perspective, that fruit, God's fruit is there.
Yeah.
And he'll get it out. However he wants to do it.
Love it.
Yep.
Good stuff.
Yep.
Good
Yep.
stuff.
Yep.
So what we got? Sunrise,
Just a
sunset
right there. Just
again.
another sunset that we had that was just a beautiful time.
And if you're viewing us live, your sun is setting where you're at now. So, man, what a great time we've had again. I'm gonna let you off the hook this time with any personal questions, but we're gonna get you the next time we join together again here. But what a wonderful conversation again, and we look forward to next week as well. Another Africa.
Yeah, we might be finishing up there. I don't really know, but I appreciate the opportunity to be able to share what it is that God is doing. And our prayer for this is that somehow along the way, you have allowed God to speak to you.
Yeah.
And so it's not just my experiences and the things that I see. Maybe some of this has rung true for you. But then again, what is it around your life that he's speaking as well? Because God is always speaking. He's always revealing himself to us.
He is. I feel like I just got 5 sermons, Pastor. Great stuff. Hey, love you guys. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Be blessed.